So we'll go back to the beginning real quick. So
Yeah.
how'd you get into music in the first place, and then how did you turn over the dark side into free improvisation?
The dark side is what got me into music.
Is that right?
Yeah. I mean, I played trumpet when I was 11 in school. I had a terrible, um, uh, like adolescence of being a truant and having all kinds of conflict in my life and family, and so it meant that my sort of education was really unstable, and so I gave up playing the trumpet because that was a school thing. And of course, this is during the 60s when the Beatles were big and the Rolling Stones were big. And 50 years ago, last month or in December, my friend Danny, who was like my best friend, was visited by his cousin Frank, who played guitar. That was when I was 14. And Frank showed me how to play some chords, and I gradually earned enough money, $100 really. My brother loaned me 50, and I earned maybe 50 or $60 doing odd jobs, and I bought the cheapest guitar and amplifier I could buy, and I started practicing. And we had a band that was pretty bad starting that year. It was like pre-punk bad. It was like,
That's the way to start, though. Isn't it?
Yeah,
That's
we
the way
just
to
did
start.
it.
We did the same thing. It's
yeah,
like,
right?
You just do it.
You just do it because you need to do it.
Yeah.
So that's the dark side part. Is like I needed to do it, and it made me happy. It made me think. In all this chaos I had around my life and my school problems and my family issues, and music focused me and gave me something to work on, and sort of taught me how to learn in a way that was, useful to me. And I got better at it. That was a thing. Like we played Beatles songs, and my friend Frank took the solos, and I sang and played the guitar. And then gradually I started taking solos, and then we played Rolling Stone songs, and I could play the solos on those better. So I played solos, which got me into playing the blues, which meant that I practiced and I learned about like major, minor pentatonic scales at different keys. Although first I learned them in just positions, and played the blues. And then I had other friends who were into some other kinds of music, and I got into Hendrix, which was, Hendrix died when I was 15. But around when I was 15, going on 16, I went to an alternative high school in New Haven called the Unschool of New Haven, which was a student-run high school. We had these crazy Yaleys and other people, Harvard people, who started this school. It was like a free school, which was a thing back then.
Yeah.
And we made most of the decisions, and we could study whatever we wanted. And so I concentrated on music, and I had all these friends who were into pretty sophisticated ideas about music. And we were down the street from the Yale School of Music, and we're in New Haven, which had a really great music scene. So I went from sort of playing blues and playing rock and wanting to be something after Jimi Hendrix, and then watching that kind of disintegrate into kind of bad Las Vegas kind of, glitter rock.
Sure, yeah.
It was like that didn't hit me very well. Showbiz,
Yeah.
Gradually, well, at the Unschool, we would improvise, and we would play with, bottleneck slides, and we were just, really literally sit around and smoke weed and play with a black light on and improvise.
Sure.
This is, 1971, so I was 16.
Yeah.
And
Just free improvisation.
yeah, we
in
just
that-
play. Maybe
yeah,
we
just
have
to
a
play.
couple of chords, or we jam on that, and at the same time we're making tape recordings and like doing sound on tape. We're just being kids. We're just trying to be cool, being like psychedelic musicians, and that led to learning about Frank Zappa, and that opened up a bunch of things. Like the first time I heard about Cecil Taylor was from reading about Frank Zappa, because I heard about Buell Neidlinger, who played bass with Frank Zappa and also played with Cecil Taylor, and coincidentally was the first bass player at New England Conservatory, was responsible for that. Anyway, there's a lot to say about him, but because of that, turned me on to Cecil Taylor. We got into playing jazz out of the real book. I took some guitar lessons with a guy named Tony Lombardozzi in New Haven, who's still around, and he and I were both Mary Halverson's teachers, which is an
Oh, is that right?
amazing coincidence. And then that sort of led to one thing. We got into Miles Davis and the electric stuff, and then from that we got into Coltrane, and then from that we heard about Albert Ayler, and from that we heard about Cecil Taylor, and then all that was even better. And then, am I going on too long?
No.
Okay.
It's great. Yeah. It's all very interesting the way that all of this is, you find something from something else, or what brings you into that world.
Yeah. And then in New Haven, we met Michael Gregory Jackson, who now goes as Michael Gregory, because of the obvious conflict, who was a guitar player who was connected to Oliver Lake and some AACM people, and just getting going. At the same time that we heard about the Art Ensemble of Chicago, which is why we noticed Michael, and at the same time that Wadada Leo Smith moved to New Haven. So Leo Smith lived in New Haven, which brought the AACM to our doorsteps and caused us to be interested in that. So by 1973, 74, late 73, I was still listening to Hendrix and all kinds of rock music, but also to Albert Ayler, to Coltrane, especially late Coltrane, which was really my favorite, to Cecil Taylor, to Stockhausen in the library, to going to Yale concerts of Stockhausen and Messiaen, and to the symphony on every Friday night to hear all kinds of stuff. It was free. I saw lots of improvised music around New Haven, and I started going to New York to the Village Vanguard. I got to meet Pharoah Sanders and Rahsaan Roland Kirk just by being there and saying hello. And so the whole thing sort of came together. And at the same time, like everybody my age, we tried to be kind of fusion guitar players, and we were all trying to imitate John McLaughlin, which was, this towering, monolith of like technical mastery. It was overwhelming to all of us. After Hendrix is like, okay, that's over. Now we have to do this. And I know there was a critical point that I remember, and I feel lucky to have remembered this, that while practicing hours a day to try to play like John McLaughlin and being okay at it, not good enough to think I could do it, but thinking, learning a lot and getting a lot of technique and trying to play standards and using modes and arpeggios over chords, a pretty simple way of playing changes and stuff like that, trying to do that, trying to play in time, things like that, trying to play with Miles Davis records and Coltrane records and all that stuff while practicing this McLaughlin stuff, working on scales and trying to be really fast. And I would get bored, and while my brain would kind of shut down, I'd start playing my own stuff.
Yeah.
And one day I just went, why am I trying to play like him instead of trying to play like me? I mean, if I really admire him, which I did, and all these other people so much, the reason I thought it sort of hit me that the thing that I admired the most about them, and I'm sure this sense was influenced by reading about Braxton and Leo Smith, people who said very similar things. If I was trying to be like him, I was sort of missing the point. The point was to try to be like me, but to try to make what I did as rigorous as anything else on my terms. And so from that point on, I've just tried to play like me.
Sure. Yeah. And that's really what draws us into all these people, it seems to me. Like the reason that we like whoever, Anthony Braxton or Albert Ayler or Coltrane or any of this is that they've been able to find a way to sound most like themselves.
That's it. I mean, I think that's it. I think that's missing more now than it was then. Like a lot of things back then in the 70s, there was a very open idea about how to draw things from music. Lots of people did it. McLaughlin was drawing from Coltrane, but also from Indian music and Miles Davis, and Braxton was drawing from Stockhausen and Webern and also Lenny Tristano, and Ives was having his centennial in New Haven, and they played all of his pieces.
Oh, man. Yeah.
There was just tons of stuff. You go to the record store, and there'd be sections of music, and we looked at all of them, and we went and listened to records and, kind of spaced out on the music. We had a real, like, emotional connection to all of it. Like it was how we defined ourselves as young people.
Sure. Yeah. I had a similar experience as a kid, and it drew me into all kinds of different, like to me, Art Blakey was our punk rock in a certain way. Like,
Really?
we had this whole experience of those of us who knew the stuff, it was like a visceral thing. But to a lot of other people, jazz or improvised music or whatever was kind of an academic experience. And
Right.
it sort of went in that direction of, oh, we learned this in school and we have to do it. But to me, it was always about that. And I sort of retain that, but I wonder if we've gone in a direction in music education where it's become a lot about like, well, you have to know the rules and you have to follow these particular things. It makes it hard to, let's say, pursue your own voice to the greatest degree if you're told at every angle that, well, you also you have to be able to do this specifically. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's a balance there, of course, to be able to play and to have the technique and everything. But
I mean, I have to say, I was disappointed when I got into playing jazz and finding out that a lot of people in it had that idea. Even people I really admired, they would kind of, they were kind of, straight in their point of view, even though their music was pretty far out. That was kind of disappointing, and it was really disappointing. I felt really left out. I mean, I still do in a certain way, in a big way, from most music scenes because I didn't go to music school.
Mm-hmm.
I'm self-taught. There's a sort of sense that there's a right way to do stuff. I kind of upend that a lot. Like a lot of times as a teacher, I get a first year guitar student or something. I might say, so who do you think is the best guitar player? Just to find out what these people are interested in.
Sure.
And, it's not uncommon for people to say, well, Jim Hall is the best guitar player, which is a perfectly reasonable thing to say. He's a great guitar player.
Mm-hmm.
And I go, well, you realize that Jim Hall invented that. And they look at me like I'm out of my mind. But Jim Hall invented that.
Invented what Jim Hall did.
Yeah.
Sure.
Jim Hall invented what people perceive as the right way to do it.
Sure. Yeah. And it's the same way with all of our heroes.
Yeah.
It's like all
Miles
these people,
Davis, he invented that.
He just came up with it. Right.
Yeah, he figured it out.
Yeah.
It wasn't like there was a law that he was trying to live up to or some scientific formula that was supposed to be followed in order to be correct. These are creative inventions by people that become, the sort of aesthetic, technical imperative that other people who don't allow their imagination to have any sort of say in what they do, that they just follow to think that they're doing it right, to be involved.
Sure.
And that ends up overwhelming the other thing. And I guess to go back to what you first said about me seeming to be able to do whatever I want, I'm determined to just keep doing that.
Yeah.
I feel like it has to be retained.
Sure.
Otherwise, it's over.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's not like I'm the only one holding it down. There's loads of people out there doing that. But I am determined to keep doing what I feel like doing.
Sure. Yeah.
It's only music,
Right. Yeah.
It's not brain surgery. Like no one will die if my music is terrible or incomprehensible to people.
Yeah.
No one will be injured. Some people's sensibilities might be hurt, but that's good.
Yeah, that's for the better.
That's what we're supposed to do.
That's what you want. Right. Of course.
That's what we're supposed to do.